Hello and welcome to the Silent Evil podcast. I'm Spencer Scott Holmes.
I am Cameron.
We're coming at you with Metro 2033, a game series that I have literally had for like a decade. I think I bought like a long time ago. Like I bought it like on my Xbox One. I know when they did the remasters, and then I bought Exodus when it went on sale, and then I bought the games again because they were on sale on GOG and I could stream them on Luna. But sadly, after June, you won't be able to stream anymore on Luna for those things. So it's like, oh, that sort of defeats the purpose. I don't know why Amazon's getting rid of the GOG part. That's like that was the only thing I used it for.
Yeah.
You know, so but and then I haven't bought the VR, the fourth game, so I have that one sitting there and waiting. And I always had just good intentions on these games. Like I was going to get around to them at some point, but just never did. So I was kind of glad we finally sat down and played this because these have been on my backlog for a long time. I mean, granted, they literally just give these games out practically. They sell them so cheap that it like almost makes you feel like, what kind of game is this? Like I always kind of was so curious exactly what it was, like because you know it's like they'll sell them for like $2.99, which makes you feel like is this kind of like a C grade game? Like what is this? Like why is it so cheap? You know, it's like Warner Brothers. Warner Brothers does that with all their games. They always sell them for like so low, and it's like these games are actually really good. You could actually put them on sale, but they don't need to be like literally pennies.
Right. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I think like still to this day, like to preface all of this game is so worth its total box value of $50 or $60 or whatever it is. Like I would 100% buy this at that cost. But yes, this title does go on sale constantly. Like
I saw it on Steam and it was like $6 for like all of them, and I almost thought about buying it again. I'm like, why?
Yeah.
But it's just so cheap. That was why I bought them on GOG. It was like, it's so cheap. I can stream it on Luna. Maybe I'll do that.
Yeah.
But no, I agree. The game is like, because I wasn't 100% too sure if it was a B game or a C game or something like that. It's like, oh no, it's a fully fleshed out real game and everything like that. I will say, kind of going into it, the only kind of downfall I sort of have is I wish I kind of played it on Xbox 360 back in the day. I think I would have appreciated it a little bit more that way. And the only reason I say that is because there's a lot of other games that I played that are very similar to this. So it kind of felt like you're just retracing similar paths, but with a Russian twist on it, because it reminds me a lot of Resistance, actually, more than anything else. Initially I would have said Fallout, but it does have Fallout elements, but like Resistance, it literally feels so much like that game. And I love the living daylights out of Resistance. That was a great series that Sony just threw in the dumpster and never coming back. But beyond that, it also reminds me of, of course, Half-Life. A lot of these kind of games always sort of have those Half-Life little vibes going on. And then even Gears of War, because it's got that gray and brown aesthetic that was, everything of the 360, which I will say the 360, I think, is the number one shooter console era of all time. I don't think anything's ever beat that.
No way. Yeah, I mean, Metro for me, so I was huge into Stalker. I love Stalker, between, the Shadow of Chernobyl, the first game, the Call to Pripyat, like all the different Stalker games, even to today, like Stalker 2 and whatnot. Like I love these games. But the one piece that Stalker was always missing is it didn't have a very Stalker 2 has an exception to this, but the original Stalker series really didn't have like a heavy narrative based anything. You would accept missions, you would go do things, like you would go into the zone, you would go like, fight a bunch of like mutants and, find anomalies and blah, blah, blah. But it's very much written, designed in the fact where it just gives the player agency. Here's an open sandbox. Go have fun. It's terrifying. It's dangerous. You're going to die in one bullet, but, go explore, and whatever. And I always really appreciated that because it's very, this whole, Metro and Stalker and all this all come from the same design ideals and the same like backstory of, was it Roadside Picnic? The book,
Okay.
And so and it's post-apocalyptic Moscow, Russia, like it's Ukraine, like it's all these different areas or whatever. So what's really interesting is that Stalker was developed in 2007, Shadow of Chernobyl, and then I think in 2009 is like the next game, and then the third game came out shortly thereafter there too. After the development of Stalker, so GSC Game World makes Stalker. a handful of those developers like really learned a lot through that experience of how to create an open world sandboxy style, hardcore shooter or whatever. But again, like per my complaint, there's a piece missing with the narrative side of things. So a bunch of those developers left GSC Game World, created 4A games out of Kiev, Ukraine, back in, I think in 2006. And decided that they wanted to do Stalker, but with a heavy narrative basis to it. I
want to ask this real quick before you go any further. I think I have Stalker in my collection for one, but I've never played it before or anything like that. So when, like, almost the way I'm picturing it is because you kind of mentioned it's sandboxy, it's open world in a sense, and so on, limited story. It almost sounds like it's like Breath of the Wild, because I was always like, that's like one of my biggest complaints of Breath of the Wild is it has a kind of a weak narrative compared to other Zelda games, but it's got fun gameplay, and that's kind of like what it makes up on. And that's almost what that sounds like with Stalker, whereas it has like some really cool gameplay, but there's not tons of backstory and not tons of cutscenes and things of that nature, which, there's pros and cons to both of those, of course.
Yeah. Where Stalker could be the Breath of the Wild style game. Metro to me would more be like your Majora's Mask, your Ocarina of Time. Like it's a very curated, like straight line experience for the most part. And just has like a really deep narrative that is, ran by, your primary character, Artyom. And like, I just love the way that he's written, the way he outward, like projects himself when it comes to the inner monologue and things like that in between story chapters and everything. So this game feels like basically Stalker, but they put Half-Life into it in terms of like a very streamlined narrative based, experience and whatnot. And I think it's all the better for it. I don't look at Stalker versus Metro. I don't look at it that way. I look at Stalker and Metro, like in the same category,
Well, they're in the similar, companies and all that kind of stuff. So it makes kind of sense there. And one's more of a narrative one, one's more of like a gameplay one. And once again, going into these games, I knew it was first person, but I really couldn't tell you more on that. Like, I wasn't too sure if it was going to lean heavier into being a Fallout type game where next thing you know, you're talking to people and doing quests and walking around a world. And I'm kind of glad it's a straightforward story, because that sometimes to me, that's what I like in first person shooters is I love the story element, take me from point A to point B. Don't make me have to dick around doing a bunch of little things in between, that just like kind of, I like how this one was just, we're going with it. We're running with the story. We just go down the chapters and everything like that. Of course, if it's in Russia, you give me any Russian, Soviet, any of that kind of stuff, I'm already sold, like, on the story. Like, I don't need to know more. It's like that thing, like, I'll see like movies or I'll see books or something like that. If you put like a hammer and sickle on the cover, I'm like, I already want to know. You don't need to tell me anymore. It's all that Red Alert that I played back in the day that's like, influenced me on that. But so I love the Russian part of it. I love just the story that you're like, there was a nuclear kind of fallout in a sense, and everybody's down in these little metro train caverns and so on like that, and kind of surviving. And the fact that when you even go up to the surface, you got to put the gas mask on, everything, which is, you put gas masks on in few games, but like the fact that it's a big deal in this one, I thought was kind of neat. And how it just really, it can start to crack and you find new ones and you put it on and it cleans it up. And there's even parts in the game where like you start to run out of filters and it's like, stop talking, guys. I need a new filter. You don't do the slow, walking. Like, oh, what's going on? We're just having a good time. And it's like, no. We speed it up. Speed it up. Yeah, which I did notice the game has a safety feature in there, because there was points where I was like, I might soft lock myself out because I do not have a filter and it's taking way too long to get to the next scene. And I died like once from that. And then I noticed that the game just starts off and it's almost like I had an unlimited filter on when it restarted. I'm like, that's cool, because you come across them all, like for a while I was like, dude, I got so many of these. And then all of a sudden I was like, if you have to like kind of search, because this game is a little bit confusing. It might be straightforward, but I got really lost in this game a lot, where I was just like, where the hell am I supposed to go? Because the game kind of tells you got the little radio thing that you can pull up that kind of gives you a direction, but it only gives you a compass direction, right? And sometimes the compass direction goes right to a door that you can't open.
Exactly. I mean, so I already had an advantage walking into this for this episode for us. So this is my third time I've ever played through Metro 2033. I've beaten the game twice over. So once it launched, another one probably a handful of years back, you know, maybe 5-6 years ago or so. And now this. What I find really interesting is that my first two experiences were the original, you know, Steam release 2010 version of the game and whatnot. That takes a bit of modification to get working on modern hardware and all that, you know, with resolutions and things like we were talking about. But this was my first proper experience with Metro Redux. And so just for the audience, like basically what the Redux version is that when Metro Last Light, the sequel, came out, that 4A Games decided that they were going to take that engine of Last Light, import 2033 into it, and basically just make it super streamlined in between both games. And then they came out with Metro Last Light Redux as well. So that was a revision of that game. And I tell you, man, when you talked earlier about the 360 era, the grays and browns of that era, there's a certain look to that timeline, you know, like within that, you know, within gaming and whatnot. Metro 2033's original version, if you think the Redux version looks like that, like you gotta like play the original version of that. I went back, I re-downloaded it, and I started playing it again just to kind of like recap and whatnot. It's so funny to me how even just like down to textures, you know, like how similar they are to things like Gears of War, to things of, you know, the 2006 to 2012 era, basically, you know. But Redux, though, the way that it redesigned virtually everything, like everything is slightly different. It still has the same look to it. It looks like it's a game of 2010, but they redid all shadow and lighting maps. They redid all the different texture designs. They upscaled everything. Like everything just like looks super modern, but it plays like a game from 2010, you know? So I very much really enjoyed that. Shadow and lighting, especially in the Redux version, is tenfold over what the original game was, in my opinion.
Well, and then they also add some other gameplay elements. I kind of read that somewhere that sound like there were some other features that were put into the Redux one. Some stuff that has to do with the gas mask and so on, I want to say.
Yeah. So in the original version, you would have the gas mask and whatnot. It would still crack. It would still, you know, like change out filters and all that type of stuff. But there's like one animation that they added that came from Last Light, and that's you wiping your face, you know, like wiping the screen of the thing or whatever. So that was one. I read something about that too. There's a handful of minor differences that were ported over from Last Light. So,
well, they also said like silent takedowns, and I kind of wondered. So, like, you can't probably sneak up behind a guy and, you know, do the attack. You probably just have to shoot him, which that's fine and dandy. I mean, I don't think I did any silent takedown except for the one time it told me to do one.
No, yeah. See, my experience this time, and again, it's because I knew the kind of flow of the game and like where the heavy combat was, where to be sneaky, where you can actually unload and, you know, play Doom Guy more or less. But I actually stealth a whole lot of this game, and surprisingly it works, because again, with the shadow and lighting thing that they did here, it exists in the original game. You have dark areas, you have light areas and whatnot, and enemies will, like, you know, react to you based off of that. So if you're hidden in the shadows, they're just not going to fucking see you, you know. And it's exemplified here because darks are actually dark, you know, light is actually light and whatnot. It very much feels like Splinter Cell in that regard, you know. I was getting a lot of flashbacks to Splinter Cell playing this run, doing the stealth runs and whatnot. So
yeah, I kind of learned early on that, like, my tactic is that you find a corner, back yourself in there, shoot a guy, and then all the rest of them in the room will come running towards you, and you just kind of take them out that way and be like, okay, there seems like there's no more activity. Go forward.
Yeah, exactly. And that's something to talk about too. So right off the bat, when you start the game, you get difficulty, you know, sections or whatever. You have I forgot what the different modes are, but it's more or less like the survival mode versus like we're gonna give you more ammo. You're gonna have more opportunities to be in combat and whatnot. I forgot what mode they called that, but so there's that option, and then there's like a normal hardcore, survival hardcore, and then like this like ultimate, you know, like the crazy, you know, difficulty edition or whatever. So what I did is I started off with the first two options. I did survival, to make it more like a survival horror game. And then I did the hardcore mode from there. So like the second to easiest difficulty or whatever. So the one above normal. So I did both of those. And I personally think, especially after playing the game a handful of times, I think that is probably the most. It's not an extreme challenge, but it keeps you on your toes. You got to pay attention to your ammo. You got to pay attention to your health packs and things like that. Because my second playthrough for this podcast of the game, I haven't completed it yet, but I did go back and I did the easier modes or whatever. And bro, I tell you, the amount of ammo and shit that you get in that easier mode comparatively to it feels like a different game. Like, honestly, like, so
well, all I know is I played it on, I think, normal and then normal. I don't think I didn't do anything exotic there, but I did notice the game does have like, you are kind of out of ammo a lot in that game, and like you're scrounging for stuff, and they give you a knife that you can melee attack, but it is close to useless. Like it's one of those ones like good luck, and I don't know what it is about it. Like you can't really hit people because it doesn't have that same thing like where another game like has almost like a cutscene when you like. Go to hit people, you just kind of swing, but you don't have very much of a reach at it. So it's like it was, next to impossible. You're just better off running and just hopefully hoping you'll find something. But I did notice that you do kind of run out of stuff, and health is generally fine until you get to like the gas mask kind of sections where like you just can't spend a whole lot of time like looking around or anything like that. It's like no, you better find the exit quickly.
Yep. And this game has like. There's various opportunities. So like once we get to like, section to section, this will make a lot more sense to the listener. But like, as you're progressing through the game, you have various opportunities to like go to a vendor, like you have to make it to a certain section or whatever. And you have that section to go re-up all your ammo, go get, buy all the new health packs and all the other things, because that your next 3 chapters are going to be just nothing but combat and it's trying to survive in the tunnels and whatnot, so that was fun for me too, trying to remember the points of, if I got to spend like the next 2 chapters, like, and I know I'm not going to hit a station where I can go see a vendor and go re-up my stuff. Like I'm searching every nook and cranny, trying to find every bit of ammo and things that I can, and then finally getting to a point where you are at a vendor and you can upgrade your weapons and you can buy ammo, you can buy all the things, and just stocking everything like as much as humanly possible. And still, like by the time I would get out of that station and run chapter 1, chapter 2, chapter 3 into the next section or whatever, like by the time I'm in that like 3rd chapter beyond the safe zone, it's like I'm running out of health, I'm running out of ammo, I'm scrambling, dude, I'm running, I'm hiding in the shadows and stuff. Like I don't know, it was such a good experience to come back to this title after all these years. Like I love this game. So
and it's funny, like you mentioned the shops, and I think I bought a couple things in the beginning, and then for a long time I kind of just stopped buying stuff unless I needed ammo. And then once I kind of, just picked up, because you pick up random guns along the way that sometimes are like, okay, this one's kind of cool. And then like generally if I really like the gun, then I go, okay, now I'm going to max out whatever it has, give it the even better, stock, which was a couple times in the game where like you have a great gun and then all of a sudden you get like literally like a cutscene gun, and you're like, cool. And then you're like, oh, that got rid of my other gun? What the hell? Yeah. I was so pissed when I lost my good machine gun. I had a great machine gun. It was silent and all this kind of stuff. And the stupid flamethrower replaced it, which the flamethrower was kind of, it literally replaced it. I thought the flamethrower was going to be its own slot, but it was like, nope, that just replaced your, or I guess it probably replaces whatever gun you were holding. But, I was so bummed because I had this great silent machine gun. It literally could like take guys out like left and right. It had real good aiming on it, and it was like, oh, perfect. And then nope, there it goes. Yep. And I never found it was like I found other machine guns, but I never found one as good as that one. The rest of the game. Yeah. I went back to using the pistol and the shotgun, I guess. Yeah.
See, and that's what like I actually did find that really cool, because like I was trying to remember, like how that game flow worked, with weapons and whatnot. Because right off the bat you get the 6-shot revolver or whatever, and it's like by the time you get to like Riga Station for the first time, and you're talking to vendors or whatever, and like you notice that like, I can put a scope on that. Oh, I can put a silencer on that, but it costs so much, and everything in this economy is bullet based, so you literally are trading with bullets, to like buy things and whatnot, which I think is like a really cool like continuity thing, within the universe. And
the bullets you're using are like, they're the good bullets because they're war bullets. So they're like when they were made good, where everything else that you're kind of using is, like just put together, like, literally guys putting it together. It's not made out of a factory or anything like that. So which I think you could use those good bullets actually as ammo, but I think they explained that in the very beginning, and then like I totally forgot about it, so I never used any of that the whole time. So probably when I could have just like used all this ammo that I probably had built up, instead I was just aimlessly running trying to find regular ammo on the ground.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, no, and that is I didn't notice it so much in the normal mode or whatever, but in survival mode, like there was a handful of times where I had to use my currency to load my gun up just so I could pass the next section and whatnot. And that's a risk reward factor that I just adore. Like I love stuff like that. So I thought it was
it is cool. As I said, I just totally like, because I said they mention it once, because the game does have kind of like, and probably it's a little bit different on PC, but on like Xbox, you have like, hold this button, this brings up all these windows, hold this button, this brings up all these windows, and so on like that. So you kind of have all this stuff, and you're like, oh, okay, this is a bit here. And the one for like, even like you press like select and then it pulls up your radar thing, but it also has your notes on it, and it also has your lighter on it, which the lighter's really badass. It's like this bullet that like clicks open and lights. But I feel like it's like some of the stuff's kind of jumbled around in there, and you're like, oh, okay. So I think that's kind of how I totally like forgot that you could actually use those actual special bullets, because right now I couldn't even tell you how you loaded them on the game.
I'm pretty sure you just hold the reload button or whatever, and then that automatically takes them over. But I mean, like, and there is some complexity to this. I'm actually really surprised that it works as well on controller that it does, because like even just key mapping on the keyboard and whatnot, like there's so many key binds, to be able to do things in the game and whatnot. It's wild. So, but good on for making it work on a controller. I'm super glad to see that. Oh, and that's the other piece too about the Redux version. That was the port over into consoles too for Metro 2033.
I think the original one came out on Xbox, because it was like an Xbox exclusive in PC. It just never came out on PlayStation.
Okay.
So the Redux versions when it came out on PlayStation, and then everything else. But so it came out. I read that where it was like 360 and PC at the same time.
Okay, I got you. Yeah, I guess I've seen that 360 case before. So yeah, I guess that makes sense. Yeah. I've only ever played it on PC, so I don't know.
It plays actually overall. It plays pretty solid on the controller. Like they got it pretty dialed in on there. As I said, there's just some like cluster kind of menu stuff that I felt like this probably could have been simplified a little bit more. Or sometimes I hate to start to say it, games a lot of times don't like to use this, but like just have the old fashioned. You press start and you just select everything through the menu. I like. Sometimes that like action menu thing I think is always kind of a little bit obnoxious. Just like I don't mind if the game pauses, and I can go be like Resident Evil, and I can just go in there and fiddle with everything and get it all ready, and then go back to the game. Sometimes I think that would just be a little bit easier. But because you pulled it up, and it's like you had like when you pulled the menu up, it had 8 things you could do, because it had 4 things on the D-pad and 4 things on like the action buttons. So that was always that one too. It's like when they asked you to change filter, you're like, oh. What do I forget? Oh, where is it at? Like, oh, this is the filter. Okay. And then there's like the flashlight in there that you could charge it somehow, some way. The game was never that dark, so I never worried about charging the flashlight.
Oh, really? Yeah.
So I'm probably going to turn the brightness up all the way, because when a game asks me to like, what do you want the brightness to be? I'm like, crank that all the way up.
Yep. No, I don't
think I ever use the flashlight.
Yeah. No, I totally played into the so again, playing on an OLED screen, blacks are actually black, whites are actually white. Paired with the Redux's HDR mode and whatnot. So it's like really dark, like really dark. So but honestly, I mean, like, I don't know, the flashlight, and between the flashlight and the lighter and whatnot, like it was fine. Like I was able to see enough and whatnot. I think that a lot of these systems, like you're talking about, with like holding a button to open a wheel to select a thing, you know, like change out your gas mask like on the fly, and you know, things like that. It's just all in the name of immersion, you know. And it's so funny to see in Metro, because like that is 100% Stalker. If you're gonna call Stalker anything, that is probably one of the most immersive first person shooters I've ever played. It may not have a great story, it may not have a great narrative, it may not have great, you know, like characters and lore and blah 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 and all this type of stuff, but man, it's just really good in that regard anyways. So yeah, immersion based games are definitely my thing nowadays for sure. So.
Yeah, well, it makes sense because now it's, you know, a VR game for the fourth one. So, you know, it's one of those ones that it feels like it would fit into there quite well.
Yep.
And yeah, it does take you into this world and everything like that. And, you know, as I said, I'm just one of those people, like, I don't mind a menu. I'm like one of those ones, like a menu to me just always seems logical, you know. But no, I mean, overall, like, control wise, it was still fine, still played smooth and everything like that. Never had too many issues there. You know, just going into the game, it does have this kind of cool factor that, one, you're battling these like demon like mutant monsters that came from, you know, whatever radiation sort of had fallen upon here. And I like how it has that, and you're battling those for quite a while, and then all of a sudden it will throw you like, okay, now there's some soldiers. So that's where it always reminds me of Half-Life, is when you're battling a bunch of monsters, and then all of a sudden soldiers appear out of nowhere.
Yep.
And of course, there's, you know, different factions that you run across along the way, which I would have liked to see them kind of go deeper into it. Like, it kind of feels like it's there, but like, you know, because it's like there's pretty much like there's your group, which is like, in a sense, the regular kind of Russians, in a sense. Then there's the communist Soviet like ex-Russians. Yep. And then there's, you know, these like, you know, futuristic Nazis out there and so on like that. And I was kind of waiting for it to get really into it. Like, I don't know why I was expecting something like the Wolfenstein remakes that they kind of had. Yeah. And I was like, oh, it's going to get deep into this stuff. And then you kind of just see these guys. And if they didn't mention those two things, or you didn't read some of that in the notes, you almost never knew that, like, that, oh, these guys are Soviets and these guys are Nazis. Yep. It's like, they almost seem the exact same. Like, they just seem like soldiers, which I just thought was a really cool concept. And granted, I bet you, like in the book and everything like that, all this stuff's much more like in depth and explained and all that kind of stuff. And I'm kind of hoping that even like the sequels of these Metro games kind of go deeper into that stuff.
That's what Last Light is about. It's all about factions. So like, yeah. So yeah, I very much look forward to getting to that for sure. The factions in general. So again, part of, I think, where people may struggle with this title is that there's a lot going on in the game world as you're exploring, and more specifically, like in hub zones. So like right off the bat, you know, like after we get through this, like, so basically, like, we start the game, we get this inner monologue from this character Artyom. And he's explaining how, you know, the 113 million Russians, you know, like the nuclear fallout happened. And he was basically just born, you know, and they got 200,000 people into the Metro system. Everybody else was on the surface. Everybody else died. Right. And now it's 20 years later, and now they're down to a population of about 40,000 whatnot. And Artyom is all he knows, all he's ever breathed and ever lived has been in those Metro tunnels before. He's never seen the surface. He's never, you know, he hears about things, he reads about things and things like that. And what's really neat about, and I think this is where people are going to struggle with things like the Reich, things like the Reds, you know, the communist and Nazi factions and things. It is very well explained in the game, but you need to take time to stand there and listen to all the individual NPC dialogues. And none of it's like, you know, directly in your face. You're walking through a Metro tunnel station, basically. There's vendors everywhere. There's people all over the place. People are having drinks, and some dude's playing a guitar in the background. There's fire, you know, sitting around, you know, people sitting around campfires. And
there is a lot of chaos when you're in those areas. Like the talking, it's like one of those ones where it's got a little bit of that, like, where like if you walk too far away, of course you can't hear something, but like if you're standing in certain quadrants, boy, you hear everybody, and it's just like, well, okay, guys.
yeah, it's way too much, and that comes from that. I just call it the 4A games fucking 2010 jank, basically. Like, you know, audio layering back then just like wasn't there.
Yeah, well, it's that, and once again, it's when games are trying to be that immersive. It's kind of like something that always kind of bothers me too. Is that if they do that thing where a character's talking to you, and then if you walk too far away, you can't hear them. I'm like, I get that. It's like in real life, but like it's a video game. Like, you know, do that thing that like some games will do it where like when you're next to the character, you hear the character, and when you walk far away, it almost like it comes over the radio next. You know, but they still keep talking. You know, because sometimes that thing where it's like I don't want to just have to walk and talk. And this game doesn't do really a whole lot. That's not like Red Dead where it's like, oh, let's just walk and talk. Like, don't do that. Don't do that. No. Let's get this game going. If you want to talk, do a cutscene. Don't. Right. I don't want to sit here and just listen to you.
Yeah, exactly. So with all that, the immersion factor is again a core design pillar of what this game is, and it wants you to slow walk your way through every station, talk to every NPC, you know, and like you don't even really like talk to NPC. There's a handful of people you can physically interact with, and what
you more just stand there and just like
and just listen to them talk. So, but there's a lot of cool stuff going on, like even right off the bat here. So like, again, you know, like we start off as Artyom, he explains his backstory and whatnot, and then all of a sudden we're like on the surface, there's crazy hell demons flying around and stuff, you know, like it's you with like a squad of dudes and whatnot. You have no idea what is going on at this point, other than we're being attacked by a shit ton of mutants and whatnot, right? And basically you fight a handful of things and whatnot, a cutscene plays, the demons come in, the mutants come in and whatnot, basically start killing everybody, and then like you get knocked out, and then the title flashes Metro 2033 or whatever, and then it launches you into your first chapter. What I really, really love, because I just did it right before the podcast, I rewatched all the chapter intros. And what's really neat about this game is that Artyom technically like is writing in his diary constantly throughout this game, and he has this monologue in between chapters and whatnot in your loading screen, basically saying like, you know, whatever the case is of what is going on with Artyom at that exact moment and what his thoughts and feelings are about his current situation, you know, is just written out for you, you know, in between chapters. And I thought that was so well done, because it adds so much tone to that character, you know.
Well, and I thought it's like the perfect amount too, because they just give you these nice, like just like a singular paragraph that really catches you up on here, you know, and just get you like, okay, now we know where we're going to next as we go down this journey, you know, and each one will stack on this new bit of knowledge and so on as you're kind of going through here and seeing these monsters and crazy stuff.
Yep. So we get through the prologue, we do that battle and whatnot. Artyom gets knocked out, and then the game basically tells you 8 days prior, you know, and we wake up in this place called Exhibition, and Exhibition is one of the many outpost encampments that exist throughout all these metro tunnels where, you know, these Russian survivors basically exist and whatnot. And this is exactly what I was talking about. You wake up, you know, like out of your bed or whatever. There's a dude standing there, and he's just like, "Hey, you got to come talk to so and so," and blah blah blah. You know, so you basically just like wake up and you start following the dude. And this is where you can sit and listen to every, you know, NPC interaction, hear their thoughts and feelings of what's going on in the world. And basically, what we're acquiring as we're walking through this station is that there's a lot of bad shit happening to this station. They're getting attacked constantly, you know, by these things that we are hearing are called the Dark Ones. And we have no idea what the fuck that is, you know, at that time. Like Artyom probably knows, you know, to some extent. And again, we'll get into it whenever we do play Metro Last Light, because this ties heavily back to the intro of this game. But anyways, we learn about these things called the Dark Ones and whatnot. There's a character named Alexei, and then Alexei introduced us to this other character named Hunter. Hunter is part of what Spence described as like one of the normal factions, not the Communist Party, not the Nazi Party, but just like one of the normal factions. And he's just part of the Spartan group is more or less what they're called. And Hunter basically understands that like, oh shit, Exhibition is getting constantly attacked. Like I need to go do something about that. You playing as Artyom, like you talk to this man and he's basically like, I need you to stay here. I'll be back in the morning, but if I don't come back, I need you to get this message to Polis. And Polis is another area that we got to go to and whatnot. And yeah, no shit, Hunter doesn't fucking return. So this kicks off the narrative of Artyom going on this journey to deliver a message to Polis, where the rest of the Spartan faction more or less exists, so they can make a decision of what to do about these Dark Ones, if they're actually going to send help to Exhibition to save more or less Artyom's town. So that's like the full premise of like the game. Artyom needs to get to Polis. There's a 20 billion things that happen in between there and there, but that's the ultimate goal of the game to this point, you know, is just get to Polis.
And yeah, you're the message boy.
Yep. What I really enjoyed is so right off the bat, Artyom in one of his diary entries is like, I have to lie to my stepfather that I'm going to this place called Riga. And Artyom knows he's going to make it to Polis, or at least attempt to make it to Polis, but like per his stepfather, because he has never left Exhibition before, you know, he's like, oh, I'm just going to run down the rail station down to Riga. So Artyom himself is he's a guard of Exhibition, and he has to sign up for these things and whatnot. So he sees the opportunity that there's a tram car that's going to leave Exhibition and go to Riga, where he needs to end up at, you know. So that's like this whole next mission is Artyom jumping on top of this basically like trolley car throughout the metro system with 3 other dudes and whatnot, and all their conversations going through this metro. You get attacked for the first time. This is kind of like where it starts to open up about combat. You know, you get handed like that pistol early on, you get the shotgun around this time and all that. What were you feeling during all this? Like, you know, because like,
these monster hordes just keep coming out, and they're like these rat things that are like super mutated and giant and whatnot. Because yeah, there's like, that's the thing, is like you just kind of get these onslaughts coming, and this is where kind of like the scares comes from. Definitely a lot of these creatures and so on like that, and they're cool because it's like, I think the thing about it is, you know, there's so many different ways you can always go with mutant creatures from like radiation and so on like that. But I like the way that they almost kind of make them look more like they've almost like turned into like demon type creatures, you know? And yeah, you do go through all this stuff, and you watch some of these guys just right off the beginning too. Like people are getting taken out left and right and so on like that. And you find a whole lot of death along the way that, you know, where all these other guys have like somewhat made it down the metro, but that's as far as they got, you know? So there is all that neat stuff, along with the notes that you find that, of course, open up more and more story stuff.
Yep. Yeah, I just like this. I like this whole like mode of transportation thing that they got going on, because obviously it's a metro system. It's rail tunnels, you know, all over the place and whatever. And I love the environmental storytelling here too, because like as you're going through, you know, and it's basically like it's an on rails shooter at this point. You know, during this section, it's like you're just stuck in your chair.
Yeah, there's a guy and pushing the you know, the crank cart or whatever you want to call those, you know, and just like you're going like, okay, here it comes, you know, blast him with that pistol.
Yeah. And I love that, you know, like, so as they're talking, I mean, they're talking about like, oh, did you hear about, you know, like we had to blow, you know, the southeast tunnel because the mutants were coming too much out of there and whatnot, you know, and then you kind of drive right past that and you see that, yeah, they fucking blew it up. They don't have any access out of that tunnel anymore. They cannot leave that way, you know? So they're basically like cordoning themselves off, and it's just getting worse and worse over time, you know? And like, but again, like the game's not like shoving it in your face. It's just in the background, you know, as you're driving by and whatnot. So like, again, the immersion side of things, the amount of things that I was like able to identify as I was traveling throughout the metro system, and just like, you know, run across the dead body that's just laid up against the side of the wall or whatever, and like the position he's in, and he's holding a note, you know, or like he's holding like a picture of something. And if you position yourself in a certain way, you can see like, oh, that's a girl. Is that his daughter? Is that his wife? Is that his bubba? You know, like whatever. You know, so it's just like minor little environmental storytelling things like that just bring the continuity of like what this post-apocalyptic world is. These people are living in turmoil, you know, like they I mean, you even find out back in Exhibition, you know, like when they're talking, and I overheard a conversation between 2 NPCs of just like, oh, mom, a rat again today, like, because that's all they can find. They don't have really food down there. Like, they have a couple pigs, that you see, like, you go past this little farm area or whatever, and there's like 3 pigs.
Yeah, it's like it. Special treats.
But they're literally they're scraping algae off the walls to put in their teas. They're finding the bioluminescent mushrooms in the deep tunnels and stuff like that so they can eat them. They're literally killing rats so they can survive. Like, every character in the game, nobody's wearing brand new clothes. It's all hand-me-down shit, and whatnot. The floors are dirty as fuck. Everything's just concrete and dirt and shit. Again, the immersion level of it is just like, it's off the rails. It's so good, just like to exist in that type of environment. I really enjoyed that.
Yeah, no, it's totally cool. I definitely dig it, and just going into the depths of there and so on like that. And I can see that the more times you've played this game too, is you kind of know to look for certain things, where a lot of stuff for me is like, I'm kind of playing the game for the first time. So a lot of that stuff is like going by you because you're just thinking about where you need to go to next so you don't get lost.
Yep. Yeah. So eventually we make it to Riga. And there's a cutscene that happens directly before we make it to Riga, where Artyom and crew basically get hit with this like sonic fucking wave thing or whatever that makes everybody like vision wall blur and like people start passing out and shit like that, and whatever. So that's where the stalker side of things comes into play. The anomaly side of things come into play. There's weird things that are going on in the world where it is very well described in Metro that like, this comes a little bit later, but you remember the little lightning ball that was like kind of flowing through the metro system and like the dude's talking about it. These residents of this area basically are looking at these things and they're just like, think of it like a fire. Think of it like a water leak. These are just things that exist in our environment that we can't really do much about, and whatnot. Mm-hmm. Meanwhile, this fucking floating ball of electricity is just like straight up just kills your ass if you get too close to it and stuff, like, so.
Yeah, I learned that
everything is dangerous. But I love when we get to, so we do, after this cutscene of us passing out and whatnot, we wake back up. Artyom is like falls off the cart at one point, and like all these like mutants rush by and whatnot are attacking the other dudes. And I love this scene too because like Artyom like gets out of that little hole that he was hiding in or whatever, and he starts running towards the fucking gate of Riga, and there's like all the guards are standing there, and there's there's a million mutants behind you chasing your ass down, and those guards at the end of the tunnel are firing towards you, right past you, just hitting all the shit behind you and stuff. And I just love this scene of just sprinting down this dark, decrepit, metro tunnel with bullets flying by and just like, you hear all this like screeching noises and shit. So good. It's so fucking good.
Yeah, well, especially those monsters too, like just the battling them and stuff is like, they can take some ammo too. Like, they don't go down easily. And so if you can get kind of overwhelmed really quickly on some of those scenes, where, especially when you're battling a lot of the creatures and so on like that, like that's where like the shotgun came in more handy than anything else there. Mm-hmm. Where something like the machine gun was great when you're battling the soldiers, but the machine gun, you would just burn through that ammo so fast if you're shooting those monsters with it, The pistol, ironically, was actually pretty good on both things. It's like, it wasn't just a backup gun. It was actually a pretty effective gun by itself.
Yeah. And I was kind of curious, too, because still, I have not played this on controller, really. For me, like, and again, this is just mouse and keyboard. Like, it's pretty accurate. You're pretty quick with your, mouse movements and whatnot. So, like, headshots, mutants or humanoids, so like it doesn't matter, like it's really easy to do. So that was a lot of my combat experience when I was in combat, was just point to the head, click, point to the head, click, point to the head, click. Even these big mutants that we're talking about that are like basically just massively oversized naked mole rats, more or less, like looking things, they're just crazy mutated. Even those things, I mean, like a headshot or two would take them out pretty quickly.
Yeah, I can see that. Since I was using the shotgun, it didn't really have any proper, like, you just kind of point and shot, and it fires, depending which shotgun you have the one that has the double barrel or the quad barrel. And then there was like the one you get from like some of the almost like juggernaut like soldiers, where it's got like the, you load it like the 6 rounds or whatever, and it rotates. So you had all kinds of cool weapons like that. But yeah, some of those things, it's like those rat things, it's like, if you got close, you could kind of like take it down and bam, bam, 2 shots. Okay, reload real quick, shoot the next one, shoot the next one, shoot the next one, and hopefully hope that like you can kill it. I will say I do like how the guns also, I don't know about all of them, but they had kind of like a secondary fire mode too. It took me forever to figure out exactly what that was, because like you'd press like L2 and it's like you would, or maybe it was L1, I can't remember, but like you would double fire the shotgun, like both rounds at once, or you could shoot them singular on like R2. And I was like, oh, that's kind of cool, you know? So you could really just unload it, because you don't see that very often in games where you can actually shoot both of them.
Yeah, exactly. I'm trying to think if any other weapons had like a secondary fire mode. I don't.
Yeah, see, that's the weird thing is I can't remember any of the other guns having a secondary fire mode, but the shotgun. Because like, did the pistol? What did the pistol do? I can't remember that one. Did the machine gun have anything? I don't know if there was I don't think there was a grenade launcher attachment or anything like that would have been there.
Yeah, no, I don't think any of the other weapons did. I think it was just that double barrel shotgun, because you can fire one or the other or both at the same time. And frankly,
and maybe what it was is maybe because you can't aim the shotgun, like manual aim it. That might have been the reason why. Because if you held L2 on anything else, you'd aim down the sights, but I don't think you could on the shotgun.
Yeah. No, I think you can. I don't know how it is on controller. Like I know you can aim down sights because you can slap a scope on that shotgun. Oh,
okay. Well, maybe you could then. So maybe it was a different button than that. I can't remember. So it's been a moment since I kind of went through that. So
yeah. But I mean, even then, I mean, regardless, it's like, so back to narrative real quick. Like, so now we're in Riga station, and Riga is basically like the first outpost where we come across vendors. Right off the bat, I kind of forgot, I was like, well, I kind of want to save my money for some good upgrades. I was looking at my weapons and whatnot, and didn't really have enough bullets to really buy anything of value anyways, so I was just like, screw it, I'll just hang on to it. Not recognizing that after we leave Riga, there is a massively long section of gameplay where you do not come across another vendor forever, and talk about scrambling to find ammo and stuff. Well,
that's the downfall of the Battle of the Monsters, is because you waste all your ammo on them, but you don't get to pick anything up.
Yeah.
So it's just like every shot kind of almost like, it's like you can't really get, I mean, sometimes you can run, but like you kind of have to kill everything in your way, or else it's just going to be more of a problem.
Yeah, exactly. So entering Riga, we get introduced to this character named Bourbon. Now, per our stepfather, he thinks that we're at Riga just to, more or less protect that train car all the way there, and we're coming right back and whatnot. Well, in Artyom's mind, he's like, no, fuck that, I'm going to go to Polis. Need to find a guide. I've never been to Polis before. It's like, how do I get there? So you get introduced to this character named Bourbon, and Bourbon's a really interesting character, because right off the bat you can tell he's just kind of a sleazebag. He's maybe not so trustworthy, but he's your best shot that you have at that current moment, so like, fuck it, we're gonna take it. And you hear about this again, immersion and just like things that are going on in the world. You start to hear Bourbon complain about like, yeah, we kind of got to get out of here. I owe some people some money. Like, let's go, like let's leave this place and whatnot, go buy your shit so we can leave, So right off the bat, like we kind of get this like weird feeling about Bourbon, but again, he's the only character that we have come across so far that's willing to get us to Polis, So, what's your thoughts about Mr. Bourbon?
Well, it's funny because I actually thought this character was going to go on a little bit longer with you too. Like, for some reason, it's like they make it out like, okay, this is going to be a big deal character. He's going to be here and so on. But like, I do think a lot of the comrades you come across, it's interesting, like how you only have them for a handful of levels, and then next thing you know, something happens to them, and then you're on to finding somebody else to kind of help you on your journey. And I do remember that, like, it was like he was getting sketchy about being in the area, and I was like, oh, okay, whatever. I already bought what I wanted, so I'm good to go if that's what you want to do.
Yep.
I think, was this the town where it had that little boy that was like, give me a bullet and I'll show you how to get out of here. And I was like, no way, get out of here, boy. He's like, oh man. I remember I got real lost. I was like, okay, here's a bullet. You need to get out of here.
Yeah,
I couldn't figure it out.
because he's the one that introduces you to bourbon.
Okay, yeah, that's right. Okay, I couldn't remember exactly like if that came before or after, but yeah.
Yeah. So after kind of exploring Riga Station, the other thing that's going on in Riga Station is that this is kind of our first introduction into the Reds. So this is a very communist-based outpost, more or less, you know.
Mm-hmm.
And you see it everywhere, man. Like there is just turmoil going on with all of its residents, you know, and like these armed guards that are just treating people like shit everywhere you go, you know, and you know, like basically they are slaves, you know, which is also an urgency to get yourself out of that situation. You need to leave, you know. So Bourbon tells you that, okay, I can get you to Polis. Let's get out of here. And we start to enter into the tunnel system, but this time on foot. And this is another, most of the metro sections I think are really good, and in general, just tonally and atmosphere and whatnot. This one is really good because like as you're traversing on foot, you're basically like in the main metro, and then there's like a side like little you know, like a pipe or something like that. You got to crouch, you roll through that pipe and whatnot, you pop into another metro system. The landscape kind of changes a bit, you know, like in terms of like, oh, there's more mushrooms around here and whatnot, basically telling you like, oh, the townsfolk don't want to come out this far because it's so fucking dangerous, you know, and you're fighting mutants and all the shit alongside of it too. And it's basically just like your journey through the metro tunnels with Bourbon, you know, following Bourbon and whatnot. We eventually make it to a place called the Lost Tunnels, and this is really where flashlight comes into play, at least in terms of my experience. The Lost Tunnels are dark. Like they were so fucking dark. So this introduces you into the mechanic of, so you have this little headlamp or whatever, and you have this very basic recharger thing. And it's basically just like this device that you pull out. It's got like a little squeeze handle on it that you just kind of squeeze, some gears start turning, generate electricity, and you recharge your shit, you know, basically. And that's like its whole function. We fight a bunch more of the mole mutants here and whatnot. Yeah, there's the, like, at least according to my notes, like there's an ambush here, and during this ambush, this is where ultimately Bourbon dies, you know, and whatnot. So earlier back in Riga, like I said, like we're understanding like he's in some shit with some high up people in the world and whatnot, you know, like he owes a lot of people money. He's kind of a shyster. He's kind of this, that, and the other. And ultimately a fucking one of the Reds kills him, you know. Mm-hmm. And that, man, I love that scene too, you know, because like he's just like standing there and whatnot, you know, in front of you, and you're like sitting on the ground at this point, and you're kind of looking up at him or whatever, and then that fucking Red soldier just like sneaks up behind him and just fucking murders his ass, you know, just like takes him out. Back in 2010 when I first played it, that was a shocking moment because like you said, I'm like, this is the guy that's going to take me throughout the rest of the journey. Nope.
Nope.
Like,
nope. He's not there. He's not your Dom or any of those things from Gears of War. Yeah.
No. You get him like maybe 45 minutes, you know, like, which is pretty good.
Yeah. And they just took him out and everything like that, you know, and then I almost want to say this is where it starts to roll into where you start to fight the human characters.
Close. Very close.
Close. Okay.
This is where we meet Khan. So Khan is a long-term, character throughout the Metro series in general. So you'll hear about Khan a whole lot more moving into Last Light and probably Exodus if I were to guess. But anyways, and Khan is the one that is willing to take you to the next steps of the journey that you need to be on and whatnot. Whereas Bourbon, like he seemed kind of, I don't know, like resourceful and like, you know, can survive the metros and whatnot. Like he's not terribly terrified of the metros. Whereas Khan, on the other hand, lives and breathes the metro. Like that dude has zero fear of anything and whatnot. I love this section where you're following him. So this whole chapter is called Ghosts, and it's a very narrative heavy section. There's not a whole lot of combat or anything like that. You're basically just following this dude, you know, as he's talking. Mm-hmm. And there comes this scene where, you know, like he's walking, you know, through the tunnel, he's right in front of you or whatever, and all of a sudden he goes, stop, you know, and like you stop real quick. And then all these like shadow people start showing up at like, you know, the basically where you're looking down the metro tunnel or whatever. And he just like very calmly just kind of like uprights himself, just slowly starts walking, and he goes, "Don't run." And you just like, you know, start walking, you know, with him and whatnot. And you're seeing all these like shadow people around you and whatnot. More or less, you know, like we don't know this at the time, but these are part of the dark ones, you know, that we were, you know, experiencing back in the exhibition, you know, the starter town and whatnot. So Khan is a very interesting character. He's a very seasoned Metro dude, you know, and this is also where that anomaly pops up. So he's the one that's explaining to you, like, you know, as you're seeing this like ball of electricity kind of like roam around the metro and whatnot. He's the one that's more or less like explaining to you, like, this is just the way the world is now. This is natural. Think of it like an earthquake. Think of it like a fire. Think of it like a blah, 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 you know?
Yeah, he's just accepted it. And he's very like, you know, this is how life is, and if that's how I'll go with it, you know, in a sense, passive towards, like, you know, he's not going negative on any of this stuff. He's very optimistic in a weird way, and just like going with the flow. And I did learn is whatever, don't touch those shadow creatures too. Like if you bump into them, game over.
Yep. Those things will kill your ass very quickly.
And so sometimes Khan's not quick enough to tell you, because you're just like walking along, and then he'll tell you to stop, and you're like, okay. And then it's like, well, he meant stop, you know, way back there. I learned that, like, I was like, dude, what the hell? I did exactly what he said. Like, and then I figured out, it's like, oh,
yeah,
he's way back there. Yeah, there he is.
Yep. So he wants to take you. So your next stop in his portion of the journey, anyways, he's telling you, he's like, we're going to Cursed Station is where we're headed. Cursed Station is really fucking cool, because what you find out there is, like, when you show up to Cursed Station, there's an armed, you know, handful of guards out front of this, you know, outpost, more or less. And the guards are explaining to you how this place is literally cursed. It is nonstop attacked by mutants. These guys are out here constantly fighting shit, constantly. And you say, you basically, like, as you're talking to these dudes, you know, one of those invasions starts, you know, like one of those attacks, those, you know, from the mutants and whatnot. And you basically have to sit there and defend the station, you know, like, so it's you and like the 4 other dudes and whatnot, and everybody's defending it. Meanwhile, you get sent on this mission. They're like, hey, we lost our bomb squad. Like, I need you to go get that bomb and go blow up the tunnel. And yeah, you're going by yourself. And it's like, fuck you guys, you know, like, what the fuck, you know? And then they're like, yeah, you know, if too many monsters come, just run back here. And it's like, well, yeah, but you guys aren't even that good at taking them out. Right. Exactly.
That area, I literally ran out of ammo, because I was like, what the hell? Because I was, you know, it took me a good moment to figure out where you're supposed to go and what you're supposed to grab. And so I just like ran like up and down, grab something, you know, there it is. Okay. Found the bomb, found where to place it, you know, but it took me a good while to figure that part out.
Yeah. So there's 2 quest complete checkboxes for this one, and it's grab the bomb, go to the left, you know, the west tunnel or whatever, and blow it up. Super easy. You find the bomb, you go there, you plant it, you set the thing off, little cutscene plays, the whole fucking, you know, tunnel collapses and blah blah blah. Right. The second one is destroy the airlock, or like, you know, close the airlock or whatever, you know, like, it's something about an airlock. I've beaten this game twice over at this point. I'm on my 3rd run. I should know exactly what to do at this point, but that is just one little tidbit of that game that just whoop out my mind. I have no idea what it's talking about. Airlock.
Well, and I'll say this game also does the thing that, like, if you space out for a second when somebody tells you something, like, the game doesn't repeat it. And if the game, like, say you die and it resets, it doesn't tell you once again what you're supposed to do. Because I think I had to look that up, because I was like, what? I totally, he said something like, I didn't catch that. And it's like, there was no way to figure out what it was. Yeah. You know, so I had to look up, like, what the hell he said again, you know? And I was like, because this is one of those ones, like, if you miss it, that's it.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. And this one got me, you know, I actually text you about this, like, after I got through it, because I had to look it up, and I was like, where the fuck is this airlock? And it just happens to be 2 pillars on either side at the top of this staircase, where you just happen to have an interact button with one of your grenades that you can just put it in there, you know, and then run away, and then it blows that up too. And it's just like, what? Like, why was it designed that way? It's so confusing.
And then don't run any farther off that way, because I saw like the escalators. I'm like, oh, I wonder if you can jump down there. Nope, died.
Yep.
There's some of those things where it's like, it looks like you're like, I think I could make it down there, but it's like the game doesn't want you to go there.
Yeah, no, it's just instant kill box every time. So according to my notes, yeah, we push forward, we seal the tunnels, we fight off all those waves of mutants and whatnot. We get through Curse Station. Curse Station dumps us off into Armory. And Armory is, so all the way back in Riga, we did all this shit leading up to here. Armory is the next checkpoint where you're like, cool, I got vendors again. I can buy things. I can, do things and whatnot. And especially after Curse Station, I needed that so bad. I was out of everything,
Yeah.
So what's cool about Armory, like the lore of Armory, is that this is, per the name, this is where the Russians in the Metro systems were creating their weapons. They're building their bullets, or doing all the, that's where all the munitions are, for the Metro, So when we go in here, this is where we're talking to vendors that have like better things and whatnot, for your weapon upgrades and shit like that. And what's really neat is that, like, this is when you talk to one of those vendors and he kind of gives you, I think this is where you get the silenced machine gun, if I'm not mistaken. Like, one vendor gives you a silenced machine gun at some point in the game, and I think it happens here. But what I found really interesting about it was more or less like about how, like, Armory is, like I said, like the whole like munitions area and whatnot. With the amount of times that you've seen exploring these metros with them blowing out this tunnel and like, trying to stop the hordes of shit coming and whatnot, it's like, how do you realistically get those munitions around? Like, and I guess that's why people like Artyom and, Khan and, Bourbon and all these characters exist, because they're kind of like runners like that, or they can be anyways, because they know the system.
Yeah, it's about the only way. You got to use literally humans to like traffic this stuff through.
But this is, especially like as you're walking through all these vendors, because you're seeing all the gun builds and stuff like that. And this isn't like, go grab the AK-47 off the wall. Like, no, this is like literal welding of pipes together. And like, I'm not sure if you ever played with the weapon in the game, but there's like a whole air pump system gun.
Yeah, I was gonna say, yeah, that one where you pump it. There's a couple of them. The sniper rifle, I think, also like was an air pump one too.
Yeah.
Which is it was kind of an interesting feature. I'm like, I don't think I've ever really seen that in a game before.
Yeah. And again, for like the continuity sense, because when people are in turmoil like that and they're low on resources and whatnot, they have to get crafty with the way they do things and whatever. And you see these just various amounts of weapons that they're building and whatnot, taking
super custom,
just all these different components just to create a weapon and whatnot, so like just continuity and immersion side of things, like it's just so well done.
Well, it's just different gameplay wise too. Once again, like having like a super soaker style pump action gun like is not like a normal thing.
The
only weird thing is, once again, on the controller, is you had to like pull up, like it's not like you just press reload to pump action it. You had to like pull up another screen.
Manually.
To get to it.
Like a few times, because this it's one piece that I remember a lot about Metro Exodus, the third game in the series, is that like that's like one of your primary weapons when you start that game, is like this air pump rifle, so it's cool to see the return that late. So from here, so we enter an Armory, we meet the Rangers, which are the Spartan group, more or less. We find this dude named Miller that is more or less like Miller is like the leader of the Spartan faction, more or less, and you talk to this man about, sorry, did we need to make, I think, I don't remember exactly the order of events. From here, once we talk to Miller is the one that talks to us about needing to more or less take out the Dark Ones, I think is where this happens at.
I think this might be about it. As I said, your guess is probably definitely better than mine for more playthroughs. As I said, like this is one of those ones where I went through the story and then certain things stuck out to me, but there's probably a lot that just went right over my head.
Yeah, I just, per my notes, I know in Armory you talk to, that's right, you speak to Miller's men. So like there's guards there and whatnot. And these are the two recurring characters that come back later in the game. So you talk to both of those dudes. They tell you about Miller in Polis, and you need to go talk to Miller and whatnot. And this is how they're going to help you, basically get to Polis. So you're basically out of Khan's possession at this point, and you're with these other two gentlemen, and they want to take you to Polis, but they need to get you through what the whole next chapter is, which is basically called Frontline. And Frontline is like where you're going into the deep conflict between the Reich and the Reds, and I adored, especially on the third run, I adored this whole section because it really, this is where combat gets crazy in this game, because you're not fighting mutants anymore, you're fighting humans, and
so it changes up on you real quick on like what you need to be doing.
And it really grounded it for me. It really made it real, at that point, because I could totally see how you got 40,000 people living in a metro deep underneath this, wasteland of a Moscow above you. I could totally see this happening. I could see the faction-based stuff happen. I could see, like in real life, everybody has their idea of how they're going to run things, right?
And they're not going to get along and so on. And resources are limited. And even though that you should be all banding together to take on these mutant demon things, of course, that's not what's going to happen.
Yeah. Yep. So this next section is where it will introduce you into stealth. The game wants you to be stealthy. However, you 100% have the option to, again, run around like Doom guy and, like in Doom and whatnot. But stealth mechanics, they work for the most part, I would say. Like I said, just shadow and lighting alone, like if I was in a dark area, like I could stand a few feet away from an enemy facing right at me and he would not see me.
See, that's cool, because I don't think I didn't see the shadows and lighting that much, because once again I had it kind of bleached out.
Yeah.
So like I could see where you could kind of sneak, but I found it best if what, I'm gonna use the old fashioned, let's have them all run towards me and I'll just be in a back myself against the wall.
There you go. See, and that's a totally valid strategy too. There was a couple times in throughout these sections where you're fighting heavy just like humanoid style combatants. There was so many times where I would sneak up to an enemy and I would try to hit him with my, do the kill animation or whatever, and would just step one step too close and accidentally bump into him, and he would turn around, and then the entire camp knew exactly where I was.
See, and always one of the biggest downfalls of stealth is that you can go through fine, but then now you're in the dead center of the map, and you make one mistake like that, and then they all converge on you there. And that's why I've always kind of learned where it's like, if I can find a place where I can kind of hunker up and just wait for them to keep coming, that almost I can almost take them out that way instead, and not have to worry about getting tripped up halfway through and then having to restart the whole thing.
Yep. So this is where I also leaned very heavily into silencers. So I had a silencer on everything but my shotgun. That silence or machine gun or whatever, just single tap fire, left click, aim down sights, point at the head, click, and some of these enemies have helmets and stuff, so it'd be like click, oh, your helmet popped up, okay, click, 6-second shot, but this whole area, comparatively to what I remember of this area from the original version of the game, and I don't think the version has any difference in it. I think I just played it well. I breezed through this, man. It took me a while because I was sneaking, but I didn't really have too much trouble throughout this whole section. Outside of one area, there's one area you're basically on this bridge system that's underground and whatnot. You have Nazis on one side, you got the Reds on the other side. You start on the red side and you're supposed to sneak past all them, and they're fighting each other across this bridge. There's just gunfire going on constantly. And basically I think what the game is intending you to do is sneak past everything and get out of that, to get out of that section and whatnot. However, it's very fucking hard. Especially once you get to the Nazi end of the bridge, because they have spotlights everywhere. There's dudes on spotlights, you know, just shining them all over the place and whatever. And one, I swear to God, just like one pixel of that fucking flashlight hits you is just like everybody knows where you are. Just like, you know, annoying. So that was one section that I did struggle with. However, similar strategy to you. I put my back up against the corner. I let them come around a corner over and over. Just, you know, like alternative fire with that shotgun. You know, 2 slugs to the fucking head as they're coming around the corner, dead, easy, you know. So
yeah, I think I did, because I literally hid in like one of the cars where I could like crouch down, which I always wish you could kind of go prone in this game. This game feels like it's you need to go prone for some of these sections, but you can't. But I would just sit there and I just took out that pistol and just like headshot, 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 you know.
Yep. Yeah, that's one thing to comment on too. AI of this era is just fucking dumb for the most part. I mean, it does do some things that I found kind of interesting, like flanking. I did notice groups that would more or less, like if you were in an open enough area and they could flank you, they would. However, majority of the level design of how Metro 2033 is created is very just straight line hallways, you know.
Yes, they get kind of trapped in a funnel.
Yeah, and that's where, like you were just saying, you know, that's what makes combat easier to that extent, because you're just holding an angle, oh head bam, oh head bam, oh head bam, you know, like over and over. So but I did really like this. I like this section a whole lot. And especially once you get past the bridge. So once you're past the bridge, this is where on the fucking rail system, there's like a car that's driving around with like a big turret on it and whatnot. And there's like these massive neo-Nazi, you know, like Nazi dudes just, you know, just like firing at you and stuff. So after we get, you know, beyond this and we take out that vehicle and whatnot, this is where you get to jump into that vehicle, and it's another on-rail section, and bro, it's so much fun. It's so much fun.
Which I always feel like when you're in the 360 era, like it's like all those games have that on-rail section, if not 1, if not 2, if not 3 parts. You know, it's like guaranteed in any of those games that you're going to have something like that.
Yep. So yeah, so my notes say, yeah, we do some trolley combat.
And now is this where we're starting to get to the surface?
Okay, so we missed that.
I guess we went to the surface once already. Yeah, I was just saying we went up there because that's where you start to see some of those flying creatures, which when they grab you, it's like, okay, damn it. Yep. Drop me off somewhere where I know where I'm going to stand back up. The worst part too is when there's like 2 of them and like one would drop you, the other one would instantaneously pick you right up. You'd be like, oh my gosh.
Yep. So I got so talking about AI and how the AI in the system works and its pathing and things like that. So with flying enemies in particular, they get stuck on shit a lot. And in that section, so this is take the audience back. This is back when we're back with Bourbon. Bourbon takes you to the surface for the first time because you have to traverse land to get to the next metro tunnel to be able to make it to, you know, whatever section. So you're in the open area and whatnot, and again, tonally and atmospheric wise, it is gorgeous. It's just it's a barren wasteland of just you know,
just ash that rains down that makes it look like snow almost.
Yep. And you got those demon things flying around or whatever. There's an actual name for them, but I don't know exactly what it is. But anyways, these winged demons, and I happen to like stand underneath this balcony. There's like this balcony up above me or whatever, and I crouched, and so I could see its legs basically, but it was stuck on the balcony. It was trying to get to me, and its pathing just wouldn't allow it to go down, you know, so it's just stuck on this balcony. And I'm like, I don't even know if I can kill this thing or not, you know, like, because you know it's more
you get an achievement for killing it,
right?
Yeah, that's what I know, is because I wasn't too sure if you could kill it at first, but then I eventually killed it and I got an achievement. I'm like, oh, badass.
Yeah. I just assumed that it was like a scripted event or something, you know, because I had never really fought, even back in the original version of the game, in that section. I never fought it, you know. The game wants you to proceed and move on, you know, and whatnot, and avoid. Anyways, yeah, so again, just funny pathing things, you know, like was able to take that thing out as a super cheese just because it got stuck on a fucking balcony, you know, so... But no, the roll back around. So we get off of this, you know, armored trolley system thing with the big gun and all that. And we finally make it to our destination. our next destination is called Depot, and Depot is more or less just another heavily fortified Nazi-controlled base, and whatnot. And this section is very interesting because it is more wide than just your traditional, straight line metro tunnels and whatnot. This is where I started to notice the flanking maneuvers and things like that. I got caught really early on in this one. I tried to sneak my way through it. There's just a billion enemies down here, and it's really easy to get caught. So it's more worth your while just to, go into combat, more or less.
Just clear the area out.
So whereas mutants won't drop you ammo and whatnot, soldiers do, so like this whole time, like, especially once I got here and I was just like, fuck it, I'm just going to play Doom guy. You're getting ammo constantly. So ammo's never a problem, even in survival mode. Like, it's never a problem in this section. But again, this is where I started to notice like how the AI was like maneuvering itself and pathing and stuff. So like there is something to it. It's just not well refined within the confines of the way that the level design works. So what happens next? So basically we just like we need to get through through this section called Depot. We're looking for the exit. After you fight a whole bunch of Nazis and whatnot, and you finally find the exit, this is back where we get back in with the Rangers again. So the two boys show back up, right?
Yeah, that's right.
And this is where we got to play defender again. There's just waves and waves and waves of enemies that come at this point. We got to kill them all and whatnot. And we basically like survive until like more reinforcements show up. So more Spartans show up at this point. And then we have this like flashback sequence within Artyom. So like Artyom, like as I mentioned early, when we were leaving exhibition and we're on our way to Riga, there was that moment where, like his vision got all blurry and like, he started like hallucinating and shit like that. This is where we come across the child Dark One or whatever. So he has this like flashback sequence. So it's not even really a flashback. It's just like a hallucination of this like little creature or whatever. And as long as you don't attack it, or anything like that, it just kind of like gives you visions and whatnot of like various different things that are going on in the world. So this is a heavy narrative plot hook point that you don't recognize as a player at this exact moment, but this is such a massive point. This is what defines what ending you get, and it doesn't define in terms of like you need to do something in this section to get ending A or B, but this is the plot hook for ending A and B right here.
Interesting. There's another thing that I also read that I never saw, is that there were some of these like moral choices that happened throughout the game. I don't think I saw a single one of those like at all. I didn't see a place to make a choice or any of those things happen. Like,
so a lot of that is based around these hub zones in talking to NPCs, and you'll hear somebody go like, oh, I'm so poor, I can't afford the thing, and blah, blah, blah. You can give them some bullets. That's considered a good moral, like karma positive type, situation or whatever.
So does that add into the ending in the long run?
If you have, what's hilarious is that like definitively the canon ending to this game, which we'll get to, that I'll explain a little later, but the canon ending of this game is technically a really fucking bad ending, like for Artyom, the non-canon ending though is based around these Dark Ones and really learning what they are, where they came from, what they're trying to do, and this, that, and the other. And more or less Artyom making a decision that I'll explain a little later, to more or less save them instead of destroy them, and a lot of that's based off of exactly what I'm talking about, these karma areas and whatnot, where you can like give ammo to the kid or give, like whatever to the person and whatnot, in talking to various NPCs. I haven't looked at the path on how to achieve that, exactly. I guarantee you can go to ChatGPT and just be like, how do I get the good ending? And it'll just give you point by point, like here's what you do throughout the course of 2033. I did not get that ending. I didn't get the alternative ending. I got the traditional ending on this run. But
yeah, because I saw that like when I was reading some stuff, I was like, what are these karma things? I'm like, I've never seen anything brought up about that. I've never seen anything. I mean, I guess I gave that one kid the one bullet, but it's not like it wasn't like Fallout where it's like good karma, bad karma, or something like that.
No,
there's no indication of like that something happened.
Yeah. No, it's a hidden meter. And again, for the more happy ending, you know, being non-canon, like I don't think it was really intended for you to really get that ending, like unless you were a diehard and like we're playing this multiple times over.
So it's more of a secret ending as for what the other one is.
Yeah. It's like think of it like the Silent Hill UFO ending, basically.
Yeah, it's the super bonus ending.
Yeah. Because the actual ending that you and I both got on this run leads directly into Last Light, so it's the canon ending, you know. So anyways, we have this hallucination, this little kid looking dark one thing, you know, shows up and whatnot, starts flashing a bunch of shit in our memory. And then we finally regain control of Artyom, and this is where we got to go to the outpost that will lead us to the next section of open world, basically, like go back to the surface. So this is our second entrance into the surface. Trying to think, is there anything that really happens here? It's a whole lot more mutant fights and.
Well, I think when you go back up to that surface, you do find they now have these like big kind of bear-like creatures that you have to battle when you're inside like the hotel-looking building. And I remember the first one came out, I was like, oh God, and I ran around, blasted. I thought it was a boss.
Yeah.
And I killed him. I'm like, cool, I killed it. I got an achievement. Then I realized there was like 15 more of those things throughout this place here. I'm like, well, I guess I'm not killing them all.
Yep. Yep, exactly.
And those are kind of cool because they like bust through the wall and they kind of run at you like a giant gorilla ape thing.
Yeah, so those are the they're referred to as the librarians.
That's right.
That comes directly after we get to Polis. Like, so where we're at right now is like we do the on surface section, and we finally make it to Polis, right? Okay. So this is where we meet Miller. So Miller is, again, leader of the Spartan faction and whatnot. You explain to him about what's going on with the exhibition, yada yada. He tells you, he goes like, yeah, that's cool and all, like we'll consider it, but we need to take out the source of your problem, and the source of your problem is the Dark Ones. He explains to you, he goes, we know it's somewhere in the metro system, we just don't know how to get there quite yet, but there's a place called D6. And D6 is the basically like command post center for the 2013 nuclear explosions that happened. Basically, this is where it all happened, is in D6, is where they fired off all the missiles, or at least the command center for it. So you need to go basically figure out how to get to D6. In order to do that, they want to send you to the library, and that's where we meet Mr. Librarian.
The librarian guys, you know, which that was a pretty cool part. I did like that quite a bit in there.
Yeah. So I killed the very first one, you know, that you run into, and beyond that, like every other one, I completely forgot about it, and I ended up texting you about it because I was a bit ahead of you for majority of this experience. Well, actually, all of this experience, but I forgot those things are non-hostile if you do a very particular thing.
Yeah.
If you don't get too close to them, if you're always looking at them, you never turn your back to the things, but like as long as you're always looking at them, they'll run up to you and they'll intimidate you and they'll puff their chest and they'll kind of charge at you a little bit and just like, what, you know, like that type of shit, you know? But as long as you don't do anything, they just kind of turn their head, they shrug, they turn around, they walk away. And you're just like, okay, you know, you just keep on walking, you know?
I saw that at one of the notes as well too, that kind of explained that there of like how to deal with them, you know. So that is kind of cool that they do that in there. That sometimes worked. I will say all you had to do was do one wrong turn, and then once it started chasing you, that was it. You had to just keep running away from it.
Yep. Fortunately, because I did get one aggroed on me, and so a little bit later in the level, there's this section where there's like a whole lot of verticality. You got to kind of go like floor to floor, and you're kind of going up and down these different floors and whatnot. You're like walking across like these like pipes and shit. There's some geometry in that level where when those things are attacking you, like I got, again, you know, similar to the flying demon getting stuck on the fucking porch balcony thing. Like I got one of those things stuck, you know, like it just couldn't move, you know, like it would try to attack me and would try to do things, and it could spin in a circle, like it could move that way, you know, but just physically stuck in this position. So that was super easy, you know. I took a couple pipe bombs and just tucked it at it, you know, like took it out, you know, like pretty quickly and all that. So we fully explore this whole place called the library, and eventually we finally find the documents that we're looking for. We found the location to D6, you know, like at least where it is. So our next task is to take these documents back to the Rangers, the Spartan faction or whatever. Let's see. Yeah, so we take them back to the Rangers, and then that puts us on the path forward to go find the D6 bunker. We have to fight, you know, yet again, this whole section is very combat heavy, you know, and whatnot. So like we're fighting a ton of different mutants and things like that. And we finally make it to the D6 bunker. And this is actually where a couple of those characters that I can't remember their names. They are the two soldiers that exist within the Ranger faction that has been more or less helping you post-con, you know, like to get to this point.
Yeah, they come in, come out, and so on like that. And
and one of them, I don't remember how this exactly happens. You get split up. You're with one of them. The other one gets split up and whatnot, and you just like can't reconnect at that point. And he's just like, just continue on your journey. I'll meet you at I'll meet you at D6 and blah blah blah. You know, so you basically split at that point. And yet again, we have another section where we're just following a dude, you know, like through the metro tunnels and whatnot. But this is where some point into this is where that character that you're following in this section, like inevitably he dies, you know, like he gets badly injured and dies. And we run back into that other soldier. He finally reconnects up with us and all that. And he just basically just like gets like super mad, you know, about like his friend dying, you know, and whatnot. And there's this whole scene of like the one soldier laying on the ground dead, you know, the other one sitting over him, just like my brother, you know, and like just vastly upset and whatnot. And them just like getting pissed again because like they're on this fucked up mission to go take out the dark ones and blah, 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 you know, and just all the shit they've experienced leading up to that point. It's just very heavy scene, you know. I thought it was actually really good between those couple characters. So anyway, so that all happens, and now we got to go to we're actually pretty much like approaching the end of the game at this point. After the D6 bunker, what did I write? By having mutant resistance. This is where we get into the cave system. So there's a whole bunch of this is another kind of like heavy flashback sequence for Artyom. You know, he's having a lot of like, you know, hallucinations and things like that.
Is this the part where you start running and you got to kind of go in the right direction, or if you touch the shadow creature, you have to restart?
Yep.
Yeah, because this part was one of those ones too where it's like, okay, like, you know, like you're going, and then it's like, oh, popped out of nowhere, restart, you know.
Yep.
It's not that long, but I remember it being kind of a little bit kind of like, okay, if I touch one more of these things here, come on.
Yeah. Maybe. Yep.
Like just make this a cutscene. Sometimes those weird scenes where it's like you're not really fighting, you're not really playing, you're just trying to run through, and it's just kind of weird.
Yeah. Yep. So yeah, lots of hallucinations. These things are still like showing you things and whatnot, you know, that are existent in the general world. And this is where we push back up to the surface again. And this is where, right at the start of the game, where we entered in and we are just like more or less like with other soldiers and we're in combat and there's mutants everywhere and our team gets taken out and blah, blah, blah. And then it throws us 8 days prior, you know. This is right where that is, you know. So like you breach the surface and it's that cutscene again, you know, and you kind of replay through that section, which I thought was really well rounded, you know, through the course of Artyom's journey throughout all this to round back around to the intro cutscene. You know, I thought was really cool.
I remember this is where I was stuck with the flamethrower that replaced my good machine gun, and it was like I was having the hardest time finding ammo because the flamethrower you get very, very little ammo for.
Yeah.
So it was literally just taking up a slot. And I was like, dude, how am I going to get through this? Because I can't kill half these enemies anymore because I don't have enough ammo. And I finally ran across, there was a machine gun actually on the ground somewhere.
Yeah.
And it was like, dude, if that gun was not there, I don't think I would have been able to get past that because you can't melee those monsters.
Yeah.
You know, it just is
not effectively anyways.
Yeah, you might be able to get a couple hits in, but good luck trying to kill more than one. And how up there I was like, oh man, this can be a dangerous part. But yeah, lo and behold, there was a random machine gun I found on the ground.
Heck yeah.
I was just scrounging for ammo at this point because that stupid flamethrower really screwed me over.
Yeah. Yep. Yeah, I picked up that flamethrower. I played with it a handful of combat encounters, with some enemies and whatnot, but pretty much immediately was like, yep, nope. I got my pistol, I got my shotgun, and I got my whatever, the machine gun.
Yeah. Well, I just remember like once you got the flamethrower, it's I don't remember there ever being a town section past that point. And then you were just like literally hoping you were just going to run across something. I don't remember ever running across anything on the ground for the longest time.
Yeah. So that's one other thing to describe about this game that can be easily missed on your first run. I missed a shit ton of this on my first run too. Where you were saying like you were getting turned around, like you were struggling to try to figure out like where to go and whatnot, because there is a lot of side paths in this game. A lot of side paths lead to nothing, like they just kind of run into dead ends and whatnot. There's
stuff that it legitimately feels like you're going somewhere, but like it goes nowhere.
Yeah.
It's so misleading. I remember there was one part where I was on the surface. I kept running into the same area. It's like, this has got to be it. There was literally a nest of enemies here. There's doors. There's all this stuff, but like it's not going anywhere. Like, why would it lead me to this place?
Yep. And so part of that, and it doesn't happen in every instance and every like side path and whatnot, but majority of the reason why those exist is to find more ammo, to get more consumable items and whatnot. And then on top of that, so as we described earlier in the episode, right in between chapters, Artyom's having inner monologue, dialogue that he's writing into a journal and whatnot. Throughout your entire experience, you're finding journal notes from Artyom all over the place and whatnot. So a lot of these side paths like hold things like that. Either, like I said, ammo, health, consumable type items, or, lore notes, more or less, of like what's going on with Artyom at that exact moment, and what he's feeling and thinking.
And some of these side paths hold nothing.
Yeah,
there was many of them that but they feel like there was supposed to be something there. It just felt like, and then your GPS things or whatever, your little arrow compass is leading you to that direction, but that's not where you need to go.
Yeah, exactly. So anyways, so now we're, like I said, we're on the surface. We're fighting through all these things. Our primary goal at this point is that we have, we've made it through D6. We know where the nukes are. We know how to fire them off. We have to kill the Dark Ones. That is the primary mission.
We got to climb the tower now.
Climb the fucking tower. And the tower's sick, dude. Like I forgot how cool that tower was. Just leading into it, dude, from coming out of like the wasteland and all the broken down cars and broken bridges and roads and all the shit, to just looking at this just massive super tower off, like in front of you and whatnot, entering in through that, and then like having to like navigate your way through getting to the top of it. I kind of forgot that there's like, I wouldn't quite call them like platforming traversal puzzles or anything like that, but there's definitely like some like thought that goes into like, should I jump there or should I walk across that? Should I, like, how do I get to that section? Like there was a handful of those that were going on with me during that part where I was like, huh.
There is some platforming, and there's some ones that you go, nope, don't jump that one.
Yep. So anyways, yeah, we essentially like we just fight our way up this tower. It's a heavy combat area. There's tons of mutants and things like that we're just fighting until we get up to the top. And then when we get to the top, this is where Artyom like pulls out the little scanner thing that he has. He's linking it to D6. He's linking it to all the the leftover nukes from the nuclear war from all those years prior and whatnot. And basically just hits that button And then he's just like sitting on top of this tower, and he just like sits down, and he's just looking off in the distance, and you just see missile, and it's just blowing up the whole. You're basically just re-enabling like the whole fucking nuclear fallout all over again. You know,
like this time we're gonna get those dirty mutants.
Mm-hmm. And that's essentially the end of the game.
Yeah,
it's just like, you know, Artyom has this like final kind of tidbits and monologue about, you know, like war is bad, and, you know, like, you know, we had to do this to save humanity and blah 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 and all these things, you know. So the game never like really fully explicitly explains what a Dark One is. The reason why I held on that one brief moment earlier where I was like, the kid that you run into, the small Dark One, like the reason why that's such a huge narrative hook right there is because in those scenes where you're experiencing Artyom have on all these flashbacks, having all these things, those Dark Ones never kill Artyom, right? They never attack him. They never do anything. What you find out, and this is very heavily based into the Last Light narrative, but what you find out eventually when you get to the sequel and whatnot is that the Dark Ones, and it's kind of explained in this game of the Hair too, but the Dark Ones are basically the humans that existed during the nuclear fallout. They are the ones that survived. They mutated. They are more or less there to try to communicate with the people that exist in the Metro. Mm-hmm. So all of, you know, the attacks that are happening out of the Dark Ones, you know, in exhibition, in various parts throughout the Metro and whatnot, that is humanity being, it's the fear of the unknown. You know, it's the classic H.P. Lovecraft, you know, line where, you know, like humanity's like deepest fear is the fear of the unknown. They don't know what these things are. All they've experienced up until this point is just all the mutations of all the various, you know, different fauna across the lands attacking them constantly. So yeah, here's a brand new being coming. Let's attack it too, you know? So of course those things are going to view humanity that they're trying to communicate with, trying to, you know, like basically explain who they are, why they're there, you know, like we're humanity's last bastion that has existed on the surface, you know, where current humans are just like, no, fuck that, you're scary, let's attack, you know, and whatnot. So of course there's going to be conflict, you know, between the two things and whatnot. When Artyom talks to that, or talks to, you know, gets telepathically like, you know, brain fucked by that little one. If you did the proper karma route where you are, you know, 100% karma, like whatever that system is, at the end of the game, Artyom has that recognition that, oh, they're not bad. They're just trying to communicate. They're just trying to help. They're trying to, you know, like blah, 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 this, that, and the other. So instead of, you know, you still do the full tower sequence, you get up to the top and whatnot, but the cutscene that plays when you have the good karma ending is Artyom takes that little radio thing and he just tosses it off the side of the tower, not firing off the nukes and all the missiles and whatnot, saving the Dark Ones and whatnot.
Interesting.
The thing tumbles down, you know, like the tower and whatnot, and then it like lands in the snow, and then like the camera kind of pans up from the snow or whatever, and there's a Dark One standing there. He looks up at Artyom and then just starts talking, and I don't know exactly what the dialogue was of that cutscene because I haven't done it myself, outside of just viewing on YouTube, but more or less is just like thanking Artyom, you know, for like, you know, thank you for trusting us and blah, 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 you know, like it was more or less like what the narrative is. So with all of that said, 2033 is very self-contained. I feel like this story could have just been one and done, cut and dry. That's it, you know? And I think it's good for that. Where I am so excited. I am so excited for you to play Last Light. And then, because I've played both 2033 and Last Light, I have played 8-ish or so hours of Exodus. I've never beaten Exodus. And then we have Awakening on top of that to go play the VR game. I'm so excited for you to get to Last Light because I think it's going to open your eyes to a lot of what Metro 2033 was and a lot of the things that I'm telling you right now, plus a lot of the research you've done and whatnot. Because Last Light focuses so heavily on the faction-based conflict that's going on.
Okay.
You know, between the Reds, between the Nazis, between the Spartans, and all the things. Meanwhile, further explaining the Dark Ones, what they are, what they mean, what they are to the world, you know, and this, that, and the other. So obviously, I've been talking majority of this episode, and I apologize. Obviously, I'm very passionate about this game. I fucking love this game.
Well, that's good though, because as I said, like I played through the game and I enjoyed it, but it's like there was definitely a lot that felt like just kind of either went over my head or I just kind of like I didn't find all the information on. So it's like it seems like the sequel adds a lot more to it. I'm also very interested in that book too. I think like just reading the book that it's all based off of would really add a lot of details in to really flesh so much of the stuff out, you know, because it kind of reminds me of almost sort of like sometimes how a lot of first person shooters are. It's, you know, they have like a narrative and so on like that. Sometimes you just are kind of going through scenes and you experience it for the first time. So a lot of this stuff doesn't always stick or resonate the same way and so on like that. And you're like, it was cool. Couldn't tell you a whole much about it. You know, I remember some, you know, scenes here and there, but you know, that's about it.
Yep. Yeah. And that's, frankly, that's how I felt the first time I played it too. It was just such a, again, just tonally, the game just grasped me so fucking hard back then. I didn't know why I liked it so much other than it's a cool, you know, Ukrainian based developed, you know, like post-apocalyptic Russian game, you know, like, I mean, and again, like a lot of that for me back then was, it was all centered around Stalker. Stalker was the shit back then, dude. That was like probably one of my more favorite FPS games, you know, that was not Halo, you know, like, you know, so yeah, I mean, I'm really glad that we finally did it. We've been talking about Metro for quite a while at this point. I just feel like it was such a good experience to go back to. It was so streamlined. I told you right off the rip, I'm like, it's kind of long. Expect 12, 15-ish hours, you know, like it's not insanely short, you know, but expect that. I got through it in 7.
When you said that, I was like, I remember because like the game kind of ended and I was like, I think that was only like 8 hours or something like that. Yeah. No. You know, it wasn't super. It was about a normal length first person shooter story. That was pretty much at the end of the day, no different than maybe a Wolfenstein, you know, Doom, you know, Half-Life, any of those, you know, Half-Life maybe a little bit longer, but you know, it was kind of about that same realm, you know, especially for the Xbox 360. That's a very common time frame. It's about give or take 10 hours, you know, for a game. And I will say, once again, I do kind of wish I would have played this game when it initially came out. I think I would have enjoyed it a little bit more then. It reminds me of that problem that like this happened because after Fallout, I had a really hard time with anything post-apocalyptic because Fallout kind of just got me Fallouted for so many years. Like, cause I remember like I played other games, like there was Rage, and I remember playing Rage, and you know I put a handful of hours into it, and then it was just like, it's cool, but it's pretty much just Fallout with cars and the Doom engine, you know. And then I remember playing Borderlands, and I was like, it's not bad, but it's kind of just Fallout with a little bit more. Weird upgrades and RPG elements and so on like that. And so many of those games, it's like, I know that they were good games, but because of the Falloutness, I kind of it really burnt me out on that like genre. Yeah. I mean, even to this day, sometimes I kind of think about going back to Fallout. I'm like, nah, I think I'm good still. I think just those like between Fallout 3, 4 and a little bit of New Vegas, it was like, there was just too many hours in that kind of like world, and it kind of jacked up so many other games for me. Yep. And sadly, I feel Metro kind of fits into that ballpark too. So I feel like there's still just a weird burnt outness that I have from that. Yeah. And I think just also because the other games too, like, you know, Resistance, you know, Gears of War, even Half-Life, just so many of the other games of that time period that kind of have it. I think if you would have caught this one like day one, it would have really stood out. And I said, don't get me wrong, I really enjoyed it, you know, but I felt like it's one of those ones I came to this party a little bit too late. Sure.
Well, and really what triggered all of this was, you know, you were so interested in Awakening, you know, the new VR game and whatnot. And initially, like that's what the plan was going to be, is like we were both just going to buy that. We're going to play Metro Awakening and whatnot. And I started thinking about it and I'm like, well, the story ain't about Artyom anymore. However, there's so much deep rooted into the Metro universe that like I just feel that if we would have started with Awakening, you wouldn't have had any of the context of any of this. And I don't know if that game would have been good or bad either way, because I haven't played through it yet, you know. I played about half an hour of it just to try it on my Quest 2, just to see how it would look and whatnot. It's wonderful, by the way. But
yeah, it looks like a good one. It's one of those mini ones that I've, just like all the other Metros, I buy Metro games and then I just never got around to them.
Play them.
Yeah, it's like I kept buying them, you know, I bought them multiple times.
Yeah.
And really at the end of the day, I will say I'm glad we finally did sit down and play it, because as I said, this game's been on my list for like literally close to 15 years. Like it's like I had it for a long time, you know, and it's just one of those ones I always want to sit down and play it, and finally did. And I think that's one of those ones that, you know, I'm very interested to see how 2, 3, and 4 kind of go, and, you know, just diving into each one of those, you know, and stacking the storylines. I'd like to actually sit down and even read the book as well too. Yeah. I think that would add a little bit more to it, because I did dig a whole lot of the stuff there for sure.
Yeah. So from what I understand, Metro 2033, the book, the game and the book aren't exactly the same. The book leans way more heavy, and I haven't read the book myself, but according to videos that I've watched, the book leans way more heavy into the faction thing, exactly what you were wanting. The book is a lot more slow paced in terms of how Archeum travels the Metro system and all that. There's not nearly as much combat as the game has and whatnot. But,
which is fine, because combat in a book is generally not nearly as interesting.
Oh yeah.
It's like one of those ones where it's like combat's great in movies and, you know, video games, but like, yeah, combat, like when in novels, if it starts to go like multiple pages, you're like, okay, pump the brakes on this here. Like, talking scenes work really good in books.
Yep. Well, like I said, like I'm just excited at this point. So we got 2033 under our belt. I'm pretty confident we're going to play through the rest of the series at this point.
And lo and behold, we got announced that there's a Metro 5 coming out.
Dude,
it was like we started this game before that, and then right as like we started playing it, they had that announcement.
That was such a wonderful morning for me, dude. So one, I got one of my best friends to play a game that I fucking adore. It felt like Soma all over again. You know, like I'm like, cool, you know, Spence is actually gonna play this. And then like literally, like we start that, I think we recorded our last episode of D2 like, you know, that Sunday or whatever, and like we started that Monday, and like we're playing for a couple of days or whatever, and that fucking Thursday out of nowhere, bam, Metro 2039, and I'm like, what the fuck? I like text that to you, and I'm like, bro, dude, hell yeah, you know. So yeah, now we have this fucking target. We've got a winter release of the brand new Metro game, and I so look forward. I look forward to talking about Last Light, but what I'm really excited for, I very much look forward to Exodus, because I still, to this day, I've never beat it. You know, I've played a bit of it. It's definitely a different design. It's way more open world, you know, semi-open world.
That one, I think I actually, that was the one I did start up. For some reason, I thought it was actually the first game. But then when I was starting the first game, I'm like, oh, I clearly didn't play this one. So I think like when I bought Exodus, I was like, maybe I'll sit down and I'll start this one up. And I think I put like just a little bit of time in there. And I think that's what the one that gave me like a lot more Fallout vibes was that.
Oh yeah. That game in particular. Yep. Yeah. I mean, I hope it's good. I mean, everything I've played of it is very good. And it kind of follows this line. It's just, it came out during that time where every fucking game had to be open world. And it was just like, your Falloutedness of being Fallouted. That's how I felt about Exodus. To me, it was just like, God, another one, because I love how streamlined 2033 and Last Light are, you know. But
and that's the thing too, is I think that's the thing. I love a straightforward, just give me a story, let me go on a journey, you know, because I always feel there's very few companies that can actually do a good open world, and I mean very few. Like they like not a whole lot. Like almost like you can count them on one hand.
Oh yeah.
So, and you know, generally if you're not Rockstar, it's one of those ones I mostly don't care what you're going to do if you're open world in this. You know, or old Assassin's Creed. I think newer Assassin's Creeds started to get where there's just too much junk in there. Like they're made, you know, to a point where it's just like, okay, there's too many repeated type stuff and so on. And you know, once again, it sounds weird. Open world games were really cool in the PS2 and the Xbox 360 era, they started to become kind of just like passe by the time PS4, Xbox One and that time period kind of came on. So it's like nowadays, it's like for an open world game, it's got to be like, something really good. I mean, no, I'm not talking about Exodus. I still think Exodus looks really cool. Ironically, that's the game that stood out to me the most because I just like the kind of, I know it's like Ash, but it has that like snowy kind of look to everything in there. And it's just like that world really sold me on that part. Yep. So, and hopefully, I'll say this, if it's open world light, then it can be pretty darn good because
it's like section to section semi-open world is how I would call it.
See, and that's not too bad. Like when you don't get like that full on open world where it's just like, okay, you get ready to waste some time, And I always feel like those open world games, like, if you're like a 10-year-old kid and this is the only game you're going to get for Christmas for like the next year, like, great, get a big open world game where you have all kinds of stuff to do. When you get kind of older, you're like, I want to play more video games. I don't want to just play this one.
Right. Yeah, exactly.
So, I look forward to all three of the, or three more of these, I guess.
Because Exodus for me, I just want to see the ending of Artyom. Like I don't have the context of the finality of Artyom's story. I'm good through Last Light in the first handful of hours of Exodus, but like I don't know how Artyom's story ends because I know, at least I'm pretty confident that Awakening has nothing to do with Artyom whatsoever. I think it's a brand new protagonist, still same world, same universe and whatnot, but it's a brand new protagonist. So, and even the 2039 trailer looks like yet again another brand new protagonist. Unless maybe it's the Awakening character. I don't know, but
Yeah, I'm assuming the Awakening, because it's on VR, they're going to make it a little bit more standalone where it's on a different system. They'll probably make it that way where it's like, hey, there'll be stuff that ties in, but the story kind of is like a little separate, like one. But no, I'm actually really looking forward to that too because I do. It gives me a reason to play more of the VR games because. The VR stuff is great, but sometimes I always feel like it does take a little bit more extra effort to sit down and go through them.
Well, Awakening is the first VR title since Half-Life Alyx that I think, based off just what I've seen of it in the 30 minutes that I played, might match Half-Life Alyx, like in terms of like quality level and whatnot.
Well, I would say the games in about the last year have all really caught up in VR because like there was that Alien one that was really good. There's like two other ones that like there's a couple other ones that I kind of bought and slightly tried. I'm drawing a blank on one of the names, like Memoria or something like that, I can't remember what it was, but like a lot of times they'll go and say like that looks cool, I'll try that out for a bit, and it's like, and then I just don't get to sit down. The Batman one was also extremely dialed in, so it's like they've gotten some of them pretty darn good. Of course, VR games are always few and far between, but
yeah, it's still super niche. I mean, ultimately, like I probably would just go buy a Quest 3 at this point. However, like with the Steam frame, with the carrot on the stick that Valve's doing with me with that right now.
Yeah, might as well just wait for the Steam frame and see what that's like.
Yep.
Because I kind of hate to sort of say it, like it's probably from Quest 2 to Quest 3, it's not as radical of a jump as like, if you wait until either Quest 4 or the Steam frame one,
right?
Yep. And really, it's that thing. The one I always say about VR games is really they need a major company really just needs to get a hold of those. Like it's almost like if Nintendo made a VR system, not Virtual Boy necessarily, but something like straight up VR. Like, I'm not saying anything wrong with Virtual Boy. I love Virtual Boy. It's sitting behind me actually. Is that's the kind of company, because the upside of Nintendo is Nintendo would be like, no, you're playing VR and you're gonna love it because that's what they do. Where Sony would put out a VR thing like they did and kind of go, well, you don't really like it, guys. That's okay. You don't have to use it, and then they don't really make a whole lot of stuff. They make like a couple of games and go, okay, Gran Turismo and Horizon. Oh, that's about all we're gonna do. We're going to back away from this.
Yeah, exactly.
That's like the main reason I never picked up the PS2 VR. It's like the only thing that I could really get for it is like Resident Evil 8 and like, hopefully if they put not, or the remake of 4. That's it. Like everything else you can get on the Quest, or PC or whatever,
Yep.
So but some of these new games though, I think are looking pretty sweet, like the Metro 4 on
that's
there.
good. That's
you
good.
know, it looks badass and everything like that. So I'm thinking that's like they are getting pretty darn dialed in.
Yeah.
You know, give it a couple generations or so. The downfall is you just got to get to where it becomes more of the mainstream. Because I think that's the thing is if people actually sit down and play, like playing a first person shooter in VR, like it kind of makes everything else seem like really like archaic, like a controller and even like a mouse and keyboard. You're like, well, what am I doing? Like this doesn't feel like, you know, it's like literally having a light gun game that you can fully move around in.
Right. Well, I will tell you in the 30 minutes of Awakening that I did play, you mentioned earlier, you're like, oh, that bullet lighter, that thing is so fucking rad. That is a core feature of the, you know, so like when you first start, you pop that up and you're like holding it up against, you know, like, so just real brief. The mechanic of the stupid bullet lighter thing or whatever is literally there's occasions where you're walking down a metro tunnel and there's way too many goddamn cobwebs. It's the only thing I have found that thing is for, and you hold the lighter out and you burn up the cobweb so you can keep walking. You know, like,
yeah, I think that's about it. I don't know. It was so cool that I literally thought about looking one up to see if you could buy it.
Oh, I'm sure you can. I'm
pretty sure. I'm like that's how you're gonna have to smoke a stogie is with that thing. You pull that out.
Yeah.
Yeah, or if somebody asks you for a light and you can pull that thing out, like
Yep. Let me just pull out my 50 cal bullet, you know, just light it up. So.
You know, but yeah, no, overall I'm really looking forward to these other Metro ones and so on like that. You know, I enjoyed this first one. I think it's a good starting point, but I think the more context that I get to know, I think I'll appreciate it even more.
Oh yeah.
You know, going into it. Because sometimes it's just so many things. It's like you're going down the story and things are running by you, and like, you know, some things are sticking, some things aren't, you know, and that's kind of how it is. But as I said, after all these years of having it sit there, I'm so glad to finally boot it up. You know, it'll be fun to get to Last Light, see how that one rolls, and then try out the other two.
Yep. Well, we definitely have some time, man. We got, I don't know how many months, but you know, if you. Whatever winter 2026 means.
It's okay because this year doesn't have a ton of games that I'm really like going out of my way for. It's just like 007 is the only thing, and then like there's a kind of a gap until I guess Nintendo or somebody puts something out, you know. Which I'm sure there'll be some ones that just come out like the woodworks, but beyond that though, it's like I still think that this year has. I kind of set it off where it's like I want to be kind of one of those ones where I'm not really too focused on new stuff as much. I want to be like, you know what? There's so many old things I can catch up on. I'm going to rather focus on that. And that kind of goes with everything from movies, books, video games. Yeah. I just feel like I'm going to focus more on that stuff, you know, and just, you know, if there's something I really want, cool. But like, for the most part, it's like, I'm going back to all the old ones that I've built up over time, and Metro being a perfect example of that. So,
Yep. Now, I'm very much in the same boat. There's not a whole lot that's coming out in 2026 that's just like, fuck yeah, I got to play that. Grand Theft Auto 6, cool. You know, I'll play it. You know.
Oh, great. Once again, that's Rockstar. You know, know we'll be good. Yeah.
Right. Yeah, there's really not a whole lot. That 2039 trailer though, dude, like I'm like, oh, I can't wait. I can't wait for that. Especially because I got brand new hardware, you know, like I just upgraded my rig, you know, to that you know, I got that 5080 and I got the 5950X and all this. So like it's like I kind of pre-position myself for something like 2039 to come out, and I'm so stoked that it's happening. So yeah, I mean, if before we log, we always do this Resident Evil rating system. I'm so curious to hear what your thought is on this.
Yeah, so our Resident Evil rating system of S through D, I guess you would pretty much say, S being the top tier and D being kind of the low end. You know, realistically, I'm probably going to say this game for me is probably about a B.
Cool.
You know, I think it's one of those ones that once again, I think if I would have played it back in the day before playing Fallout and so many other things, I could see it being a little bit higher on my rank. But I think just because I kind of came late to the party, that's about where I'm at on it. Still really enjoyed it. And I'm almost kind of hoping that the other games will like even pick that up for me as we go down the line.
I'm gonna pin mark this episode and remember that you said B, because once you get through the rest of the series, I'm so curious when we do our next end of year review, like where these games actually land. To me, obviously, I would give it an S. But after a third play, I think that there's a couple core mechanic problems with the game. There's some jankiness to it that still exists from that time era.
Yeah, the game did freeze on me about 3 times and just totally crashed.
Damn, that's unfortunate.
It wasn't really the worst because you didn't load up that far away. So
yeah. But
it did happen a couple of times where it's just done.
Yep.
Back to the Xbox menu.
I feel confident in giving this game like a just very middle of the road A rating. You know, it's a really cool narrative. I think I love the world. I love the universe of Metro. Just everything about it is just so well done. This particular title just has a couple things in it that are just like, that's kind of a bummer. Things like your crashes, things like, like the layering of audio that we were talking about earlier, again, it's immersive as fuck. Like, I mean, if you're in a crowded outpost and there's 20 people talking around you, that's kind of what that sounds like. But in a video game, it's like
in a video game, in a story-oriented one, you need to be a little bit more cinematic, you know, to try to get it going. But you know what? A lot of times I'll give a little bit more of a pass because it is the first one. You know, with video games is that thing where mostly the second one always gets it more dialed in. Yeah. You know, very rarely does the second one really dip in quality.
Yep. Yeah, no, I look forward to you playing through this, so you will have that same context that I do, especially once we get through Last Light, because then we can tackle Exodus together as a fresh experience. We can tackle Awakening and 2039 all as fresh experiences, So yeah, thanks again for doing this with me, because like I've been.
Oh yeah, well, it's also, as I said, it's been sitting there forever in my collection. As I said, I bought the series over twice.
Yeah, yep.
Thinking to like, okay, on this one here, I'm gonna play it, but so. No, yeah, it'd be cool to bust out Last Light, and then as I said, I'm really excited for the VR one's what I'm really excited for. Just to one, get more use out of course, the VR, and two, just to see how they kind of implement so much of the stuff in there, But yeah, beyond all that good stuff, we'll have some more survival horror gaming good times coming soon. You can always check out more of the Silent Evil podcast on Spotify and YouTube, along with Old Man Orange podcast. Till then, I'm Spencer Scott Holmes.
I am Cameron.
And we'll see you some other time.